Hello again! In the last video, we set up state handling for the various gameplay states, and we set up spawn volumes to be toggled on and off. In this video, we're going to handle ragdolling the player, so that when the player dies, they're unable to generate more input for the game and their character just slumps over on the ground. So let's go ahead and get started. As you recall, we are doing this sort of temporarily in our state transitioning function where we actually drain power from the character. If they hit power level below 0 and they die, we did this. We want to do something better this time. And to do that, we're going to create a function on the character level that actually handles this. So let's go over to our character and take a look. Open the character header file, and now we have a couple of different options. Obviously, we want some work done on the server, and we're going to have to send something out to the clients so the clients get some effects. Well, there's two ways we could do that, of course. We could create a multicast function, or we could do a replicated variable. Well, in this case, I've chosen to do a multicast function. It doesn't mean it's the best way to do it, and of course, you might argue that a replicated variable would probably be better, since it's possible that a player could come in sometime later, if the pawn still existed, and have issues with seeing the pawn in the correct state if they're not relevant when the function call was made. But that's okay, we're going to go ahead and do it this way. So we need to create this function, and what we're going to do is call it onPlayerDeath. So we will put it here in the public section. Whoops, that's not the public section. That's protected. Scroll up, find ourselves a public section. Here we go, right under update power. And we'll go void onPlayerDeath. Okay? And what we'll do is we'll make this a U function, and this is going to be a multicast. So net multicast, and it's going to be reliable because we need it to definitely get there. Okay? And what this is going to do is it's going to shut down the pawn and ragdoll it on all the clients. Shut down the pawn and ragdoll it on all clients. Okay, so let's go ahead and then do the implementation. Switch over to our character class. What do we do? Update power. Update power is right here. We'll just drop it in right here. It's a void function, a NMP game character on player death, and we need to append the underscore implementation. Okay, and so there's a few things we need to do, and I'm going to go through all of this, but I'm not going to do a deep dive on every single one of the things that we have to do. I will leave that as an exercise to the viewer to dig further into the engine to see what all of these things do, but here's what we're going to do. The first thing we're going to do is we need to, I'll write a couple of bits of pseudocode first. We need to disconnect the controller from the pawn, which we actually did in the other function. We'll just grab that code and do the same thing. Then we want to ragdoll it, and we're going to init physics. You need that for ragdolling. And then we're going to go ahead and disable movement, so the player can't sort of drive this ragdoll around. So we're going to disable movement. And then there's one other thing we need to do, which is the character still has a capsule, and that capsule is for some collisions. Well, we've now ragdolled the pawn, and we need to get rid of the collisions on that capsule, otherwise there'll be this invisible capsule hovering around that people could bump into. So we're going to disable collisions on the capsule. Okay, so we're going to do all of that stuff so that this does what we want. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is detach from the controller. Detach from controller pinning destroy. Okay, and then we need to go ahead and we need to set a collision profile name for this so that it all works. So let's first check our mesh. We're going to do that on the mesh. So we're going to do that, and then we're just going to drop a static fname right here for our collision profile. Call it the collision profile name, and we're going to call it, use the text macro to call it ragdoll. And then we're going to grab the mesh, and we're going to set the collision profile name to the one we just created. Okay. Another possibility, if you want to see this somewhere else, is to get the shooter game example project from the Epic Launcher. They use some of this exact same code, so you can see how they do it as another alternative to this approach, which it's the same approach, they just do it differently. And we need to set actor enable collision on the pawn now, because we're going to be doing physics, right? So we got to set actor enable collision to true. And then what we're going to do is, let's go to our, we're going to ragdoll. So we need to use the mesh, and we're going to do a couple different things. We need to set all bodies simulate physics to true. And then I'm going to do a test compile and see if we can get IntelliSense to catch up with us, because it's really bumming me out. Okay, we'll see if IntelliSense catches up. And then the next thing we need to do, under here, is we need to, also on the mesh, we're going to set simulate physics to true. And then we're going to wake all the rigid bodies. And finally, we are going to turn blend physics on. Blend physics to true. Okay, so now we've enabled, we've ragdolled thing, and so now we need to go ahead and disable movement. And where's that done? In the character movement component. So we grab character movement, and we stop. We're going to stop any current movement. So stop movement immediately. And then same thing, grab the character movement, and we're going to disable movement. And finally, get the character movement component, and we're just going to straight up disable tick. So we're going to set component tick enabled to false. So that component's not going to tick anymore. Perfect. Now we've done all that, we need to finally disable collisions on the capsule. So let's grab our capsule component and set our collision enabled. And what we're going to do for this one is use the collision enabled no collision. And we're going to grab the capsule component again. And we're going to set the collision responses to all channels to ignore. So set collision response to all channels to ECR_ignore. Okay, that is going to do the job. Again, I'm not going to do a deep dive and try to discuss every single one of these function calls. I think the best thing to do would be to spend a little time going into the engine just to survey the code a little bit to see what happens behind each of these function calls, just to get a sense of it, and then back out. You don't want to go too deep, just get a bit of a sense of it. Okay, so now that we have this functionality, we need to make a call to it. So switch back over to our game mode, and here where we told our battery character to detach, we're now going to say, hey, on player death. And that's it. So now the player is going to die. And this is a net multicast function, which means it happens both on the server and on the clients. So we need that to happen in both places. And once that occurs, we should be good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and switch to the editor. And we'll do a compile. And then, once that's done, then we'll go ahead and test it out and see how things go. Complete. All right, hit play, and here we go. We'll run around. I'm going to go ahead and collect a little bit of energy just to see if we ragdoll, separate. And wait, poor player. Poor server. Server, no. Oof. And he's gone. He's down. Server's down. Server's down. Oh, I'm moving slow. I'm moving really slow. Oof. And I've collapsed and ragdolled. And I'm pressing the buttons, as you can hear it, my keyboard, moving the mouse around, which you can't hear, and nothing's working. So input is definitely disabled, and we now are in the game over state, and our characters have just ragdolled. So that is all working for us. Okay, so that is it. All of our functionality is done. We now have arrived at the end of the core implementation, so we're good to go. In this video, we've then set up our character to handle being ragdolled, and that works over the network. And trust me, if you don't do all of those things, it is not going to work. So if you try to do what Epic did in the single-player version, it will not work. So there we go. We got all that done. And in the next video, we're going to do a conclusion, kind of wrap up, and a polish pass. So we'll polish off a few things, and then we'll be done. So I will see you guys in the next video.